Hello everybody, hope you're doing okay and welcome to Paper Court Sailing Club near Ripley in Surrey. Now I haven't come here to do sailing. What I've come to do today is the simple test of which of the Adios Pro 2 or the Next Percent is actually faster for me. So a rather simple shoe. I've just took one shoe against another one. These are probably the two shoes that I would argue are the top two shoes around at the moment in terms of wanting to go fast in any road race, really, basically anything from 5k up to the marathon and maybe even ultras. So what we're going to do is run in each shoe twice. I've chosen a 5k loop that I've done before, starting at a slightly different place, from here, and I think I'll do that in the Adios Pro first, and then I'll swap over to the Next Percent, then do a shorter loop, and then finish back in the Adios Pro at the ends. Hopefully that should eliminate most of the issues of whichever shoe you use first, you'll be fresher. So for the 5k, I'll try and do that around about marathon pace, which is about 6:50. And then for the smaller loop, I'll see if I can go a bit faster. So the idea is to get the same loops, the same time in both shoes, and look to see basically which of my heart rate is better, and also just basically how they feel on foot. Right, let's get a warm-up done, and then let's get into it. Okay, ready to go in the Adios Pro 2 here that I've got on. Let's have a quick look. Not exactly the best of colour coordination with the socks, but you can really see how see-through they are. Now, you might be wondering if you saw my Light Strike Pro Adizero Shoeoff last week. I didn't seem to like the Adios Pro 2, and it might be sort of biased. Well, since then, I've actually done quite a lot of runs in it and started to enjoy it a lot more. And I think, to be honest, at the moment, apart from the Nike ones, this is possibly my favourite shoe. And if anything now, I've actually reversed my decision, and I actually think I prefer the Pro 2 to the Adios original one. The reason for that is just the Light Strike Pro just feels slightly softer and just feels slightly easier to toe off. I still feel it's a bit wobbly, but I sort of got over that now and almost got used to it. And I think actually if it sort of promotes a bit of a nice upright sort of landing on your midfoot toe off situation, which is exactly what I hopefully do. And well, we'll see tonight if it actually pays dividends against the Next Percent. Right, so let's get on with this 5k. So about halfway through the first 5k, not too bad. This road is quite flat, but a little bumpy in parts. I've got a nice rhythm going, about 6:45 pace, so all good so far. Okay, so first 5k in the Adios Pro 2 done, and that was a time of 20:53 for pretty much an exact 5k. And heart rate averaged 132 with a max of 141. That felt pretty hard actually. I was sort of, you can see I'm sweating quite a lot. It is June, of course, in the summer. It's a bit cooler tonight, but obviously a bit humid. Not much wind about at all. So it's good fun. I think I started off at about 6:45 pace and may have moved down just a notch to around about sort of 6:42, 6:40. So that was good. So now to the Next Percent 2s. The socks sort of matching. Okay, one thing I do notice about these Next Percent 2s, just feel so much wider on foot than the Adios Pros. I think they are half a size bigger. And actually when I put these on after these actually now feel a bit big for me, so that's a bit odd. I do actually prefer the Next Percent 1 because they do fit a bit narrower, but I thought for this test I wanted to try the new incarnations of both to do a fair test of the shoes that you can actually get, because the Adios Pro 1 was always impossible to get and now impossible to get, and the Next Percent 1 kind of going the same way. You may pick up odd pairs here and there, but they're not, I think they're still selling them for more, aren't they, than the Next Percent 2. So yeah, the two offerings are now sort of similar. I think 180 UK pounds for the Adios Pro 2 and about 210 I think for the Nike one, so not a huge amount in it now. Definitely the gap's decreasing. Now will the gap decrease in performance? We shall see in about 20 minutes time. Okay, on Paper Court Lane, done about a mile now. These Next Percents just feel so much wider than the Adios Pro 2s. I haven't quite realised that before. They are half a size bigger, as I say, but even so, Next Percent's 1 definitely feel narrower. So not ideal for me. I'm probably going slightly faster than Adios Pro at the moment, so I put the camera down to stop my heart rate getting too high. But yeah, got it right. Okay, 5k done in the Next Percent 2s, and it was 3 seconds faster, so pretty much on plan. I got it the right pace. I think it was just slightly ahead midway through. But yeah, the heart rate was just slightly higher, but you kind of expect that in a way. 136 average, 143 maximum. So similar, I think with heart rate drift, you can account for that, but you probably would expect to have got that in the same shoes. And they do feel rather wide for me, these ones, just coming from the Adios Pro 2, which is kind of nice and snug across the midfoot. these feel like I'm slopping around a bit. Now I actually stopped to tie the laces up even more before I started the run after I spoke to you last time. And yeah, I can certainly sort of feel that. I felt I had a bit more length in the toe box, but equally width-wise I was sort of wobbling a bit. So maybe a better comparison in my best shoes than in the X% 1, but as I said before, we want to do shoes that we can actually now get. So what we're going to do now is basically a shortened version of this loop the other way around. It's like a little triangle loop. It's about 1.3 miles, and I'll see if I can hit that just a bit faster, because it's obviously shorter. So it'd be about, what are we looking at? Sort of a 9-minute effort, something like that, I think. I'll start that on Tannery Lane here and head that way, slightly downhill to start, and then we'll finish in the same place. So Tannery Lane here. Right, I'll give myself enough recovery. I've had 5 minutes now. I want to give myself enough recovery so I can change shoes and give myself the same recovery. I had quite a long recovery between the two 5Ks, so obviously not a full recovery because you can't do this all night, and these flies are everywhere. I'm going to get bit to shreds like I did last week. But yeah, just enough daylight I think to get these 2 little runs done. Legs start to be a bit wobbly now, so this will be an interesting test of fitness as well, because certainly noticed on that second one that it was a bit more of a struggle regardless of shoes, just the old legs, which is interesting in itself. So I think so far it's kind of an honourable draw. Had the same pace but a bit more heart rate, but you expect that because it was the second one. So this will be interesting now, because obviously I'm going to the Adios Pro second, so whatever I do in this run I'll try and match that and see if we can look at the heart rates as well. Then I'll go for another minute rest to make it 7 minutes, and then I can get going. These flies everywhere. How are you getting on the camera? Okay, the shorter loop done in the Next Percent 2s. I did about 6:17 pace I think there, so that felt a pretty hard effort. I didn't actually check the heart rate, so I'll give that to you up here somewhere. But certainly I was working there, and that was definitely a faster pace by about, best part of 25-30 seconds. So the Adios Pros are in again now, and instantly they feel like a lot snugger on foot, both width-wise and just a fraction shorter. It feels a bit more racy, if anything. So the sort of shoe that you would want to take out for like a sort of quite a short effort, no movement at all, well, relatively anyway. So I don't know, I got another 2 minutes just to even out this recovery, and then see how we go. What I'll do is set racing activity on my Garmin so that I can have a real-time view of if I'm ahead or behind, because the aim is not to try and beat the other time, but to get as near to as possible, running as close to that pace as possible to match the effort. Obviously this heart rate should now be higher in the same way that the Next Percent 2 heart rate was slightly higher in the 5K. But what we want to know is that increase marked. In fact, sometimes when I've done these Shoeoff, Next Percent heart rates have actually come down. So we shall see. So session done, just come over to the entrance to the same time to get a bit more light, and that was a lot harder. I got exactly the same time. I think it might have been a second or two quicker. I just had a quick look at the heart rate. I think it was about 1 beat on average higher, and the max heart rate was the same. So that felt like it was a real struggle. That felt like more like sort of race pace effort, probably about my sort of 10K effort if I was fresh at the moment. But yeah, I think the Adios Pro did well there. I think because my form started to go a bit ragged on there, I was sort of starting to feel the bumps in the road. That's probably what I felt last week when I was going all over the place. But to a certain extent I felt that in Next Percent, even though the roads around here are pretty flat, they're a bit bumpy because they're sort of under trees for part of it, so, and they're not that well used, so I don't think the council come around and replace them very often, if ever. So you kind of have to watch where you're going. But anyway, at least there's no sort of big hills to contend with, and you can dial into an even effort. Right, so let's have a look at the spreadsheet, which I'll return to imminently, but probably in practice in a day or two, and then we'll see what we can see. I think at the moment it's a bit of an honourable score draw here, really. Not a clear winner for either shoe, I don't think, and maybe the element of not either shoe being absolutely A1 ideal for me in terms of fit, which is also an issue. Okay, right, spreadsheet time any second now. Hello everybody, and here's the spreadsheet. It's actually taken me about a week to get this together. Too many football matches and runs to be getting on with. But just a quick reminder of what I did. If you're joining in this section of the video, I ran the Adios Pro 2 first of all over 5K, about my marathon effort.
In 2052 I managed there at an average pace of 6:42. I think at the moment I'm hoping I could run a sort of 18 something for 5k. I've got a race next week to see how I go. I mean, my first race since May, so I'll be looking forward to that. That's actually in Battersea Park on the road. And then I went into the next percent 2, exactly the same course, trying to run that as close as possible to the time I managed the Adidas Pro 2, and you can see that I was only 3 seconds out. I then kept the next percent 2s on after an 8-minute rest, had 11 minutes between the 5Ks there, and then I ran that a bit harder, probably down to about 10k effort for my current fitness, and you can see pretty much averaged about 6:15 pace there for that. And then I had a further 8 minutes rest, and I swapped over the shoes back into the Adios Pro 2 and did that shorter loop again at the same exact effort that I'd managed in the first one. So I think the most interesting stat here, as well as the normal average heart rate and the maximum heart rate, is the average heart rate I've got in red here for the second half of the run. I think that's probably the most telling in this, because it takes away any bias of being slightly fresher on the first half. And as you can see, in the 5Ks, I literally only went up 1 beat between the Adios Pro 2 and the next percent 2. I would tend to argue that's exactly what you would expect to happen in any type of session like this. When you go the second one, you're always likely to get a higher heart rate, because there's this concept of heart rate drift, where your heart rate naturally would increase a bit as you're a bit warmer. And interestingly, when I was going a bit harder in the shorter loop, exactly the same thing happened, despite the fact the order of the shoes were the other way around. So I got 1:43 for the second half of that 8-minute effort, and 1:44 for the second half. So I think from that and the general feel, then I think this one would have to be an honourable draw. I think that's probably the first time that's happened in Shoeoff. Normally the next percent sort of shines, and you can definitely demonstrate that is definitely the fastest shoe. So it's interesting that Adidas have actually come up with a shoe that, even for me, with my sort of preference for next percent, is actually performing as well. I would caveat by saying that the Adios Pro 2 isn't a shoe I'd probably take in a race, just purely by the fact it's about half a size too small for me. I think it's big enough that I can get through these tests and demonstrate their worth. But if I was taking it to a long race, I think my feet would expand too much, and I'd start to feel a bit annoyed that it was right up against the toe box. And again, it's kind of similar to the next percent 2. They just seem to have changed the fit of them so that they actually fit a bit wider. I think it's just the way that they've redone the midsole, going away from the vapor weave to this more meshy material. I think it's good for people with wider feet. For me with narrow feet, I seem to have lost out a bit there. So I think I'll be still looking to use my 6 pairs of next percent 1s, of which I've still got one in a box unused, and another pair, the pink pair, that I've only done a few miles. So I'm hoping that they'll last for a good year or so yet before the next best thing comes along. Just having a quick look at the other stats. The cadence there was a bit lower in the first one at 181 to 183. I have noticed that of late. When I'm a bit fresher, I tend to stride out a bit. But interestingly, by the end, when I was going quite hard and that was quite tired, then the cadence there, both exactly the same. Not seeing a huge much in the ground contact time. It was a bit lower, as you might expect when you're going faster. I didn't actually wear the stride for these tests. I never found that they actually told me a great deal of extra information in these things. So I thought it's one less thing to change and one less thing to record. And the vertical oscillation there, pretty much the same throughout. Not seeing much to see there. My ground contact time is still a bit over to the left, isn't it? But it got a bit better as the runs went on. And I also put up for completeness some of the splits on the segments along the way, just to illustrate how closely I was trying to get these things. Some I got them into the exact second, some are just a few out. But I think I executed this test pretty well. Got the effort on the second one, and the time as close as practically possible. I mean, obviously it'd be ideal if you got it to the nearest second and ran all the segments exactly the same, but I think that's very difficult in practice when you're actually running along. But I think it's certainly good enough for this test. And I think it's a fair result, an honourable score draw. So if you're thinking of getting in the Adios Pro 2, then this is definitely a good indication that it could work well for you. As I said, I think next percent 1 is still my favourite just in terms of fit, so perhaps I ought to do an next percent 1 up against some of these other shoes just to see if there's any difference in the fact that they're actually a bit narrow for me across the midfoot. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. Look forward to seeing you on the next one, and like and subscribe and all that, and bye!